I am Vinnie Tortorich, folks. Your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed. The Man's Too Strong is the name of that song. The man is too strong. And the man on the other mic, well, he may be too strong. We're going to find out. I'm talking about Mr. Chris Shaffer. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, Chris, can we do some business on the air real quick?
Yeah, what's up?
Where are we with the co-packer? Did they do our test? No?
I called 4 times today.
Why
got voicemail every single time.
And, it always makes us look like assholes, right? Because they tell us, oh, yeah, we're doing this, we're doing that. And then when we can't deliver on time, we become the liars.
That's why I've asked a lot of the people on the vitamin side to give us concrete timelines and weekly updates on stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you don't ask constantly, things just disappear. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling to me.
And they disappear after you've handed them tens of thousands of dollars to do a run. Doesn't seem to make a difference either way, right?
Speaking of which, the new experiment on the vitamin side is ready for pickup tomorrow. So they're going to have their test results. Yep.
All right.
They were supposed to get them before close of business today. So it's going to be available for pickup tomorrow.
All right. Well, we'll figure that out. Folks, that's all the inside baseball you're going to get today, because the rest of it is about your health and your fitness. By the way, please go check out purevitaminclub.com. It's a club. It's a vitamin club. I made these vitamins for me. That's the simplest I can put it. I made them for me. And since I had to make them cheap enough, I had to make a lot of them. So I started my own club, and you guys can be part of that club. Go to purevitaminclub.com and check it out right now and get the purest vitamins on the planet. No one else is coming close to what we're doing. Not even in the ballpark. I'll look at some of the other good companies out there, like the top companies. We're kicking all their asses when it comes to purity. Not even close. People go, what about Thorne? What about pure encapsulation? Yeah, they put crap in there. I go and look.
Well, and that's occasionally, and when I say occasionally, I should say 3 to 4 times a week, Vinny, we'll get an email from somebody that says, hey, my doctor told me I should also take this. Whose would you recommend? Because you guys don't have it. And we almost always lean towards pure encapsulations or Thorne.
Because they're the closest, right?
With the caveat of, look, their formulas are good, but they don't have our standards for purity, right? They will include fillers on occasion, right? Some of those kinds of things that we will never do, because why do you need wood pulp along with your vitamins? You don't.
And look, a lot of times we've changed our complete formulas or the size of capsules, because they were like, hey, you got extra room in here. Would you like us to put a little wood pulp in here? Would you like a little sand? How would you like us to finish filling it out?
How about some paint? No.
Yeah. How about a little titanium dioxide, some paint? And we always just go, no, let's just change the form. We had to change the whole formula to the, from 1 capsule to 2 capsules on the magnesium a long time ago for that reason, because the elemental magnesium we were using, the molecular weight changed and all this kind of stuff. I said, let's do the customer one better. Let's give them more of a good thing. And that's what we did. Anyway, Chris, what do we have going on?
So I got a few different things over here. The first one, Vinny, and you'll appreciate this. Our friends over at VegNews dropped another article this week called Cook Like Your Nonna, with these vegan Italian cookbooks.
When you said, I literally thought you said VegNews.
Veg.
Okay, because I was about to say, we're getting into cunnilingus on this podcast. What are we doing? That's weird.
The health benefits of pleasing your spouse. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Veg, VEG,
veg, as in vegetarian news.
And all right, hang on. I'm Italian, so I know what a nonna is. All of a sudden, nonnas are the most popular thing. When I was a kid, I got goofed on for being Italian. Haha, you're Italian. You guys eat out of garbage cans. And I was like, no, we don't. You guys are dirty Italians, right? It's like, where's that coming from, right? And then by the time I got to college, I was told that, oh, you're Italian. You guys are sexy and you guys are great kissers. Really? You want to go meet my friends over in the swamp? Because they think I'm a dirty guy that eats out of a garbage can. So this changed overnight for me.
Both can be true, Vinny. Both things can be true.
Yeah.
You could be dirty, eat out of a garbage can, and a good kisser.
But the idea is I went from dirty ass Italian. By the way, there were some girls, this did not happen to me, but a buddy of mine whose name ends in a vowel, who grew up in Alexandria, Louisiana. I played football with him. I'm not going to give his name. He was dating a girl in high school, but because he was Italian and the girl was not Italian, she wasn't allowed to date, I'm quoting, the WAPs, right? Couldn't date a WAP. So his friend would have to go pick up his girlfriend as if they were going on a date, and then they would switch, down the street. That was, folks, we were dating in high school. That was the late 70s going into the 80s. That's what was going on. That's where Italians were in this country just a few scant years ago. I'm not making that up. There were certain girls I couldn't date in my hometown. I just knew not to ask. Right.
But at least you have Columbus Day.
No, they took that away from us.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we've gotten rid of even that.
Yeah. Do you know why Columbus Day was started?
The Italians in New York, right? Wasn't there?
No. New Orleans.
Oh, was it New Orleans? There was a bunch of Italians that got thrown on trial for something they didn't do.
Oh, no, they didn't make it to trial. Again, folks, you want to understand, when you say this group, that group, and other groups, my group was hated on pretty good for a while. We made it out. So I understand when other groups, because when I was a kid, I was certain girls I wouldn't even ask out, right? It was just no, right? So with the Italians, it was in the early 1900s, 1920s, maybe 30s. You might be able to look it up. Some girl got raped or killed or something. And the sheriff in New Orleans rounded up 11 or 12 Italians. They had no connection to it. They just rounded them up and said, these are the guys that were involved. Chris, I want you to look this story up so you'll know I'm not kidding. And so they rounded these guys up. And while these guys are incarcerated in a cell, the sheriff said, okay, I'm going to just turn my back and the cell, here's the keys to the cell. And they went in there and just brutally beat these guys to death. Okay. That's what happened.
1891.
When was it?
1891.
Okay. So I said early 1900, 1891. Brutally beat these guys to death. Just turned their back. And then they figured out who actually raped or killed the girl, which was none of these guys. These were all innocent guys that came here innocently, but because they were Italian in the deep South, that's what happened. And as a mea culpa, they gave us our own day, Italian Day. So that, Columbus, they called it Columbus Day. And now that's been dismantled for whatever reason, because apparently that's now racist. So I don't know what it became or what Columbus Day became, but they decided that Columbus was a bad guy. What happened, Chris? Are you looking at it? Was I even close to what happened? I paraphrased the story.
Yeah, so it says lynching, which would imply that they hung them, but I think they're using it a bit more colloquially than that. Yeah, a bunch of Italians got arrested and thrown in a jail cell in New Orleans. And because of that, and then lynched. Because of that, Benjamin Harris declared Columbus Day the next year. Is that the only thing he did as president?
Who knows?
Benjamin Harrison. I know he was one of the few one-term presidents,
right?
And I think that would have been when was his term? 1889 to 1893. So that's right about the time that campaign season is starting.
Yeah.
So if we're going to be, real skeptical about it, he did it to win the Italian American vote. But
Yeah. Well, there you have it. If people want to know how things come about, we forget about history. We just did away with Columbus Day because someone decided Columbus, I don't know, raped and pillaged. Or I can't remember what he
yeah,
did.
not a great dude overall, but also not many people were, right? Like,
You can't look. The guy got in a boat. He got the Spanish queen to give him money to go, look, I'm going to go out there and prove the world ain't flat. That's what he did, right?
is that proof that Italians are good kissers? He wooed the Spanish queen into financing his voyage?
And some
Or did
people
she?
said, I don't know, he was hung like a donkey. I don't know. There's been stories. I don't know. So, Chris, let's get into health and fitness. I'm done doing history.
So we were talking about veg news.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, VegNews.
And
Okay.
they're always a great source of entertainment for me when I come across their stuff. But I had one pop up in my feed this week that I thought I would run by you.
All right.
The article is called "Cook Like Your Nona" with these vegan Italian cookbooks. Now, Vinny, you have an Italian grandmother.
I had
How
2 Italian grandmothers and an Italian great grandmother who was the one that almost outlived all of them. She went past 100. Yeah, go on. She barely.
how vegan was she?
Oh, that was Baba Ganoush is about as vegan as she got. She made a great Baba Ganoush.
So this immediately made me want to look at what they are doing, because Italian food, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have anything that would be. I mean, pasta has eggs in it, right?
Yeah.
So I started looking through this. They're saying, okay, marinara sauce. If you're a monster and you don't
So, all right,
put it
so
in your
listen,
meat.
we grew all of our, famously talked about we had a 5 or 6 acre garden. We grew every vegetable. So every vegetable that I didn't realize people went to the store to buy such thing as vegetables. That's an aisle my mom never went down because we had everything from onions and turnips and sweet potatoes. Our garden would grow 4,000 to 5,000 pounds of sweet potatoes per year. All the tomatoes you want. Everything was seasonal, right? Mustard greens, collard greens, everything was in the garden. And we all worked the garden, right? It's just what was done. The vegetables that we saw in our Italian dishes were broccoli, a lot of tomatoes in the form of stewed tomatoes and or tomatoes to make the different sauces, puttanesca, all of them, marinara, whatever. There was also vegetables. What else was vegetables? Stuffed bell peppers stuffed with meat and cheese. You understand? Parmigiana and Romano and ricotta and meat, ground beef. Right now, my mouth is starting to water thinking about a stuffed pepper. And artichokes. There was a lot of artichokes where I was, and we had a lot of fig trees. So a lot of figs, right? That was the sweet. But all of that was just around the meat. You understand? Everything was either, cow's meat, pig, or chicken. That was about it. Eggs.
So not a lot of traditional Italian food that's vegan, right?
There was meat. Listen, if you're cooking an Italian meal, there's meat on the table. Period. End of story.
So I started scrolling through a few of these. Eggplant parmesan.
Okay. All right.
Pizza.
Wait. Hang on. Eggplant parmesan. Even though it's my least favorite Italian dish ever, has cheese. So is this vegetarian or vegan? Because vegetarians will eat cheese.
Well, there's vegan cheeses now, right?
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Have you
Yeah,
seen nut cheese?
I almost made a
Okay,
really
that's
bad joke, but
as soon as it came out of my mouth, I knew where your head was going to go with it. But that is, they make like cashew cheese and some of those kinds of things. I don't get it, but they have like 7 of these cookbooks, and they went through them. And just looking through a handful of these, it's all about pasta and making pasta without eggs, pizza, because the original pizza didn't have cheese on it,
mm,
and that kind of stuff. And it cracks me up because not only are we promoting veganism, which has its own problems, but we're saying, all right, you have to be the highest carb person on the planet, right? And your Italian grandmother will definitely approve of these non-meat containing Italian recipes. I struggled to think of a single Italian dish that I'm aware of that doesn't have meat in it. Maybe one of the soups or something.
yeah.
But as far as I'm aware, everything else has meat in it. So it must be a really short cookbook and not nearly as good as Eat Happy Italian.
I remember my great grandmother. For us, the boys, they wanted to put weight. They wanted you to have a little meat on your bones. But for the girls, you had to be skinny. You had to have a figure, as they would say. You need I could see your panza sticking up, your gut sticking out. Stop eating bread. Stop eating pasta. No pasta for you, right? That's where I wrote about that in Fitness Confidential, right? If you think I'm making this up on the fly, my great grandmother knew how to lose weight. Stop with the pasta and the bread, or you're going to get the panza. You're going to get the fat stomach, right? How did they know this stuff? The woman, hell, when I was growing up, she was in her 80s. She made it to like 101, maybe. The woman made it through an entire century, right? She was born in a different country. She barely spoke our language, but she knew what made you fat. How did she know that? She never went to college. I don't even know if she ever graduated high school. She was married in her teens to Papa Tripodi. They lived together their whole life, had a beautiful family. Right? How did they know? My nonas didn't know nothing about eating vegan. I mean, the song. I mean, the song says from the Wall album, you can't have your pudding. You got to eat your meat. If you don't eat your meat, you can't have any pudding. Pudding is dessert in England, folks. This song when did The Wall come out? What year? Was that 75, 74, 76? Another brick in the wall, maybe 73?
79.
Oh, that late. Okay.
November 30th, 79.
Right. That was a year after the McGovern committee ended. And they were yelling that in the song. You can't have your carbohydrates until you've eaten your meat. Go on.
Hang on. Google just lied to me.
It's not 79. That came out long before that.
Let's see.
The Wall came out long before. Dark Side of the Moon was early. And then The Wall.
Yeah.
I want to see.
Studio album 1979.
When was the single released? Another brick in the wall. Same
1979.
time?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So look, we knew 46 years ago, you got to eat your meat, right? When I was a kid, we weren't rich. And there was a priority put on meat, a priority put on eggs. You had to have eggs for breakfast. You had to have your bacon. You got to have, they gave us grits. That was the thing. Got to have your grits, right? Your grits, your egg, your bacon. And what was on the grits? A puddle of real butter that you whipped in there and you ate it up, sometimes some cheese. That was breakfast, right? There was protein, there was fat. That's what we ate.
But Vinny,
Go on.
that causes cholesterol buildup.
Buildup. You mean the one fatty acid we need for life? Like every cell in your body uses cholesterol?
So you may not have seen this week that the health world is exploding because of the study about called the KETO trial. Have you seen this at all?
No, I haven't.
They took 80 people, so albeit it's a small study, right, who have been on keto long term, and they purposely selected people with high levels of cholesterol. Let me see if I can find the actual breakdown.
Okay.
LDL 190.
Okay.
Triglycerides of greater than 80. To see if they had any negative effects from having these escalated levels of cholesterol. And the result was that they did not. There were no coronary plaques, nothing any different from anyone else. And the conclusion was there's no association between LDL-C and plaque in either cohort.
Was that a Dave Feldman study? Is that from that study? Because they've gotten a lot of money, millions of dollars to do these studies. And these studies are proving that and by the way, if you go back to Big Fat Surprise, Nina Teichel's book, she took the same studies where they were saying that cholesterol is a problem, and she actually uses those studies because Nina knows how to read a study. That's what that book is all about. Hey, folks, they lied to you from these studies because in any study, you can squint and get any answer you want at any given time. And what the study proved was that saturated fat was not the culprit of heart disease whatsoever, but that's not what Ansel Keys, that's not what anyone wanted. So they just found they hung their hat on like some little tiny thing that didn't matter. Of course, Ansel Keys before that did a 7-country study. You know, they kept looking for the result they wanted. If you don't do double-blind studies, or if you peek behind the curtains, which is what they were doing, you could get any study to say anything at any time. We've seen that. Go on, Chris.
Isn't the 7-country study the one that started as 22 countries and then?
I want to say it was 27 countries, maybe. It was 20.
Yeah, and then they picked 7 that actually met what the expectation was and said, "Look, it's the end of the world."
Well, no, Chris, is even worse than that. I want to say let's say they took 21 countries, right? And they found that 6 countries somehow fell into the criteria that they liked out of 21. And it might have been 20. Ansel Keys says, that's not enough. We need one more country. So he saw that Lent was coming up. And he went back to Greece, and more particularly, he went to Crete. He says, look, I'm going to send a few people out to Crete. Just go jot down what these people are eating for the next 2 or 3 weeks and come on back and let us know what they're eating. Well, the Cretans eat a ton of meat year round. They just do. Except for 40 days a year where they give up, some people for Lent just give up meat on Fridays. Not the Cretans. They give it up every day. Now, they're still eating eggs, and I think they still eat fish, but they stop eating red meat for 40 days. They get their protein from other sources. They also get it from dairy product. But there's a 40-day period where they don't taste the stuff. And that was the 7th country. That's how, look, the truth is stranger than fiction. Why, Vinny, how do we know you're not making this up? As they say, folks, go Google that shit. It's easy to find this out. This is not just me talking out of my ass. Go look it up. It's out there.
Well, this is what led to the French paradox as well, right? Because one of the original 21 countries was France.
Right.
And if you look at France, they eat lots of cheese, lots of meat. And so one of the original arguments against the 7-country study was, well, what about the French? You left them out of this. If we look at the other countries, so Vinny, you were right. It's 21, not 22. France, Chile, Mexico, and Argentina. Now, I don't know what you know about Argentina, but you've talked enough to our buddy Mariano.
They know a lot about meat.
To know that that's like 95% of the diet, right? Like that is, yes, steak and vegetables, which there is chimichurri, right? Like you're not going to find not a ton of non-meat eaters there. Chile's the same way. Mexico's the same way. Colombia's the same way, right? All of these places were left off the list. Portugal, Austria, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, and West Germany, which was
I bet you a lot of the countries you just mentioned, meat, and more meat. All of them.
It's mind-boggling to me. And even if we think about the Nordic countries, right? Your Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland, even if they're not eating as much meat, they're still eating a ton of fish. Right? Like you're getting animal protein in all of these places as a staple of the diet. Now, I don't know a whole lot about the traditional Israeli diet, but I can speak to the traditional Austrian diet. And there's a lot of meat in German food. Last time I checked, right? Everything is based around meat.
Yeah. I'll tell you another one, getting away. The blue zones are also, this is the new thing, there's several blue zones, and they'll say, well, people that live in these blue zones live longer than anyone else on the planet. Here's the problem with one of the biggest problems, because this, folks, again, it's an epidemiological thing, right? Chris, list the blue zones, and then I'll say what I'm going to say about the blue zones. I know Sardinia is one. One is down in not Davis, but where Nixon was from in California. Another one's Japan. List the blue zones, if you will.
Japan, Greece, Italy, Sardinia, Costa Rica, and Loma Linda.
Loma Linda was the Nixon one. Yeah, okay. They say that these people in these areas live longer on average than everyone else. Well, the Japan they're talking about is not the low income part of Japan. It's where the rich Japanese people live. Better medicine, better food, better health overall, because people have time to take care of themselves. Go buy a house in Sardinia. Hell, go rent a house for a week in Sardinia. That's expensive real estate. Probably the only thing close to it in the Mediterranean is Capri. Capri might be more to rent there for a week than Sardinia. Again, very wealthy people. Sardinia has the most men who are centenarians than anywhere else on the planet. Now, when they ask these people what they eat in Sardinia, they'll say, oh, we don't eat meat. We eat meat, a little meat at dinner time. They don't consider all of the cold cuts they eat, all of the Parma prosciutto, the lardo. Do you know what lardo is, Chris?
Yeah, it's just pork fat, right?
It's just pork in a ball. They eat a ball of pork fat. They eat more lardo than anyone else anywhere. They don't consider that meat or animal consumption. It's just what we do, right? So when the guy goes in and goes, how often do you eat meat? And they go, oh, we'll have lamb at night, or we'll have meat, we'll have steak or whatever at night. We don't eat meat all the time, but they do. And they eat a lot of eggs, and they eat a lot of pork, right? That's one of the 7 countries. Not the 7 countries. That's one of the blue, whatever. blue zones. Same with Loma Linda. You have the largest group of religious people living in Loma Linda. They don't drink, they don't smoke, and they're rich. Go to Loma Linda and look around, folks. You can't afford a house there. You can't. I can't. You can't. Loma Linda. Rich people can afford better. They don't smoke. They don't drink. They're religious. Okay, that's Loma Linda. I just went through 3 of them, and I could keep going. But go on, Chris.
Costa Rica. So I dove into Costa Rica because they're saying, hey, they don't really eat meat. So I'm digging into this a little bit, and the reason they're considered a blue zone is the claim is that they eat 2 to 3 ounces of meat per day or less in this
That's
specific
bullshit.
area of Costa Rica. So I said, okay, what are you considering to be meat? Right? I'm diving into this a little bit. Eggs, daily or almost daily, for everyone that's between 90 and 100. And it is 2 to 3 eggs daily. That's more than 3 ounces of animal products right there.
Right.
Fish, 2 to 6 times per week. They're saying they don't do any of this stuff daily because it's all 2 to 6 times per week. Well, I don't eat red meat every day.
I do. Pretty much.
Unless we're considering pork red meat, right?
Yeah.
But I'd say maybe 5 days a week, right? We'll throw some
Right.
fish in there and maybe pork or chicken just to mix it up.
Well, same here. Yeah. Go on.
82% of this same group. So these are the 90 to 109, the people that were studied in 2017 specifically about the blue zones.
In Costa Rica.
In Costa Rica, in the area of Costa Rica that they claim is the blue zone because they don't eat meat.
Right.
65% consumed red meat between 2 and 6 times per week. 82% ate chicken 2 to 6 times per week. 53% consumed fish 2 to 6 times per week. 56% eat eggs daily, and almost 100% eat eggs between 2 and 6 times per week.
Okay. So they're saying that these are vegetarian societies? Is that what they're trying to claim? And by the way, I've been to Costa Rica. There are street vendors barbecuing up meat on the street. I mean, there's meat everywhere. We buy coffee out of Costa Rica. I'm very familiar with Costa Rica. They're eating meat. They're eating eggs. They're eating the one place that I've been to in the world where they don't like to eat, they eat nothing but beans and all this kind of stuff, India. And everybody's got a belly. Everyone's fat. These women with the saris, most of them look like they have like a beer belly. They get like a distended beer belly because they're taking in such high simple carbohydrates all the time. They get the beer belly.
And this, I think, is one of the things that's interesting in looking at this, right? So they're saying, oh, yeah, traditional Costa Rican food does not include a lot of meat. The justification for it is that it's not the main portion of the dish, right? So if I say pollo con arroz, do you know what that means?
No.
Chicken with rice, right? That's one of arroz con pollo, tamales. What's the other? Gallo pinto, ceviche, and casado. Those are like the 5 well-known Costa Rican dishes.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what they all have in them?
Meat. Or
now,
fish, meat, chicken.
As a proportion of the dish, it's not the majority, right? So obviously, chicken with rice, there's more rice than there is chicken, right? Ceviche, that's going to have fish in it or seafood of some sort. That, in that case, is going to be the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
Their olla de carne, which is beef soup, basically, or beef pot. There's a lot of beef in that, but there's also potatoes and corn. So when people look at that, they say, oh, they're not eating a lot of meat. But they are. Yeah. They're eating eggs on almost a daily basis. They're eating beef 2 to 6 times a week, chicken 2 to 6 times a week. When you add that up, you're eating meat several times a day, every day, even if it's not the majority of what they're doing. And that then raises the question, Vinny, and I know we've talked about this in the past. What is the real link with all of the blue zones? It's not the diet. It's what they do on a daily basis, right? You look at that area in Costa Rica, they are traditionally farmers. Same thing in Japan. The people they studied in Greece, they were fishermen, if I remember correctly.
So these are
Or
people who are not sitting in cubicles under fake light.
right, they literally get up and move on a daily basis.
Outdoors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes a big difference. Makes all the difference in the world. So there you have it. Chris, let's move on. What else? Well, let me do a quick ad here, folks. Anavocino has all sorts of spices and sauces. You know, we're just talking about what your Nana does. I'm going to be honest, we cheat. I can't make what my grandmother made. Anavocino's, her pink crema reminds me of my great grandmother's pink crema. Go check out everything over at Anna's company, eathappykitchen.com. Go to Eat Happy Kitchen and check out everything Anna Vocino is doing over there. You will not be upset. I use her products here. You're going to want to use them wherever you are. Go check out Eat Happy. And Bob's your uncle. Chris, what else we got?
So let's jump back to that study for a minute, Vinny, because I'm curious of your thoughts beyond the sample size, which is 100 people. The big claim against it, and this is great proof for you can read any study and get whatever you want out of it. The big claim against it is that over the study period, there was a rise of 42.8% in non-calcified plaque. And in the results of the study, they said, it's not really a big deal. And here's why. And I want your thoughts on this. I know you're not a doctor, but it's always curious just because you know a lot of these things. So in the study, if somebody had plaque of, 1 millimeter cubed, it went to 1.42 millimeters cubed. So even though the percentage change is 42.8, the actual size of the volume of the plaque didn't really change.
Right.
So is that a legitimate justification for not calling that out?
I honestly don't know. I do know that there's a huge difference between soft plaque and hard plaque, a big difference. And but when it comes to this, you know, I could get Dave back on the show to explain it, and he'll explain it in ways that, you know, the regular person, including me, will not understand it. But what I do know is that when you look at all of this stuff, they're looking at the wrong metric, right? Like all of these different cardiologists have been on the show going, if you want to look at what causes heart disease, you have to look at triglycerides and the ratio between triglycerides, small dense particles, fluffy particles. There's a whole thing that they do. These are the doctors that really care, the doctors that are really trying to figure it out, the doctors that are trying to end heart disease. The one thing we do know for sure is that if you want to get rid of heart disease, you got to get rid of processed food. Number one, start eating real food. Look, you don't have to do what I'm doing. You don't have to start drinking raw kefir, and you don't have to go hippie crunchy the way I've gone. You really don't. But you need to stop eating anything that's processed. That's what's causing the inflammation. The inflammation is what causes the heart plaques. Heart plaques is why you die before the date when you should die, right? You die early. Heart disease.
Well, that just based on my quick study of that, non-calcified plaque for a lot of people is a concern because that's what causes a random heart attack or stroke. But looking at this, the only thing that's really alarming about it, if you want to be alarmed by it, is the change in a year. But since it's not calcified and it didn't have an impact on their calcium score, it really doesn't seem like it's something to be worried about. But that's the one thing that people are pulling out and saying, oh my God, they buried the lead, right? Yeah, it doesn't impact your calcium score, but it's causing this crazy growth of non-calcified plaque.
And also, Chris, wasn't this study, I don't want to make something up, Wasn't this study done on lean mass hyperresponders? So these people are subjected to that anyway. Like this
Yes.
wasn't done. They didn't just pick 100. You had to be what's known as a lean mass hyperresponder. So you're a person that had a problem to begin with. So there's also that. Are you looking that
Let's
up?
see. Yeah, I'm pulling that up. Um,
I want to say I remember that from talking to Feldman about the study.
Here's the problem. Yeah. So the concern is that they already have elevated LDL and APOB. But those people are also always going to have that?
Right. So they didn't just take normal people. They took people that are considered to have a problem. So again, that's why I hate putting this stuff out or talking too much about it, because I don't know enough to speak intelligently about it, which is, I'm not going to go into the whole Dunning-Kruger version of what I think the truth is, number one. And number two, I do recall from having Dave on the show that they started with lean mass hyper-responders to see what happens. So this isn't you and me eating the same diet.
No. And here's the deal. Cholesterol in and of itself is not a problem. Having high cholesterol in and of itself is not a problem. If you get a test back from your doctor and they tell you you have really high cholesterol, we need to get you on a statin quick, you need to be looking for some additional testing like particle testing and a plaque score
Right.
and some of those kinds of things. And it's not something most doctors are going to recommend. They're just going to look at the overall cholesterol number. And especially if it's somebody in my family, right? My mom's side of the family has sky high cholesterol naturally.
Mm-hmm.
No plaque, and yet they still threw her on a statin. There's no signs
Which
of
is
any problems.
criminal. That's criminal. It's criminal. But you see, these doctors are told, you see a number of this, statin. I've been told by doctors, there's people with cholesterol 3, 4, 500, and they will never die of no heart disease, nothing. They will never die of a heart attack. High cholesterol does not mean you have a problem. If we haven't learned anything else on this show, we've learned that. And your family is a pure example of it. Ivor Cummins, doctor wanted to put him on a statin. You have high cholesterol. Doc, I don't have any symptoms. I don't have any problems. I don't have any plaque, but you have high cholesterol. You need to go on the statin. That's why he started doing what he did, right? You can't tell smart people to do dumb things. They're going to go figure it out and go, why am I being told to do this? That's what happens.
It's yet another one of those things. And I think, the interesting thing, and the reason I wanted to bring this up, Vinny, is one, it doesn't really prove anything, right? Just like when we talk about some of the vegan studies or the diet comparisons, it's a very small group, a very specific group. And it's over the course of a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't tell us anything. But it does tell us that no matter what the results of anything are, all sides of this equation will just take the one thing out of the study that they want to take out of the study rather than actually looking at what the pros and cons of it are. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because on the keto side of the equation, all I've been seeing over the last week or so since the study came out is this is 100% proof that what we're doing is right. And everybody on the other side saying, you buried the lead. You're all going to die because you had a 42.8% increase in the volume of plaque. And the answer is it's substantially more complicated than either of those two viewpoints, right?
Look, I always say this. If you look at a lot of the vegan leaders, they're overlords. McDougall, who died last year, wasn't that old. Gregor, who looks like 2 inches away from death. Clapper. Go look up these guys. Vegan Dr. Clapper. Go look up any of them. right? See what they look like. And then ask yourself, do you want to look like them? Or or you can look like, I don't know, Tashara or who's the guy over in he's the American living in Australia, Carnivore
Nope.
guy? No. He comes on the show all the time. Good looking doctor with a hot girlfriend. He's the American. I don't know. Sean Baker. Sean Baker is coming up on 60 years old. He's dunking basketballs. He's breaking records on row machines. You want to look like him? Or do you want to look like you want to look like Gregor? Who do you want to look like? Go look at pictures. The vegans hate her. Go look at pictures of Lear Keith. Go look at Lear Keith before when she was a vegan and when she decided to start eating meat. And go look at the difference. Right?
You just sent me down a bad rabbit hole. So you said go look at them. Have you ever seen? I think it's Gregor. The video of Gregor eating a mango.
Yeah, he goes, suck it out. Just suck. It's like, dude, that's the grossest thing in the world. By the way, he was in his 30s when he did that video. He looks 60.
I just don't get it. I would prefer to eat the meat because then I can have my pudding. But all right, so if we're thinking about that, is there any rational basis for doing
Anthony
a vegan
Chafee
diet?
is the guy. Anthony
Chafee, okay.
Chafee is the guy I was trying to come up with. Yeah.
The guy in Australia with a hot girlfriend. I would not have picked that up. Is there any reason that you can think of, Vinny, to eat a vegan diet?
No.
I don't want to bash on vegans. I'm legitimately asking the question.
No, there's zero. There's zero. I have one friend. She's my age. Well, I can't. We don't talk anymore. We were friends when I first moved to LA, and we just kind of stayed in contact. She's in her 60s now. She keeps herself together, and she's been a vegan. She lives the vegan thing, right? Alexandra Paul. She was the skinny, good-looking one. Well, they were all good-looking on what was that? The beat, the show on the beach,
Baywatch.
Right? And Alexandra even looks a little too skinny. I'm looking at photos of her right now. She looks a little. I mean, anyone would kill to have her figure, right? But she can use a little more muscle on her body. And I'm talking about someone I care about. You look at her legs, man, they're super skinny. They look like little twigs that could break. You know, she's a good looking woman, but she's looking a bit frail. And I'm talking about someone who I care about, someone I love. This woman helped me more than anyone else when I first moved to LA. She exercised. She's a swimmer like no one else. But she can use a little extra muscle on her body at this point. Right? I'm just being honest. And I love her. She's near and dear to my heart. And I'll look at her and go, oh, come on, man. Eat something that's going to help you. But, you know,
Well,
she's been there her whole life. Oh, geez. Are you there? I
yeah.
give her, you went away for a second. I give her a lot of credit for having her convictions and sticking to it. Right?
So, Vinny, there was some good news this week before I let you go.
Boy.
Did you know the American Diabetes Association launched an obesity division last year?
I
Called
did not.
the American Obesity Association. It's part of the American Diabetes Association.
Okay.
And they say, hey, 125 million people have obesity in the US, and only 10% of people go to a doctor to seek treatment for their overweightness or obeseness. So as a result, we've decided to take a boatload of money from Novo Nordisk.
Novo Nordisk. Go on, Chris.
Vinny, do you know who Novo Nordisk is? I
I
know
do.
we've mentioned the name on the show.
It's a pharmaceutical company, Chris.
Do you know what they're famous for?
I'm going to say they're famous for GLP-1s.
Yep.
Yeah.
They brought us Wegovy, right?
Yeah.
So if we needed a little bit more proof that the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association aren't really paying attention to the causes of the problems, that's as much evidence as I need. And I know the argument from them is going to be, look, they're offering us the money. We can do a lot of good with the money.
But they're not. It's all just a big ruse for more people to take their drug.
Well, how long before the AOA, the American Obesity Association, starts recommending, if they haven't already, and the ADA start recommending a GLP-1 to cure your diabetes?
Well, aren't we there already? Right? And don't they want government to pick up the cost of it? Are you kidding me? I mean, that's where we are, folks. And look, people hate. We see the hate when I talk about GLP-1s on my X, right? People, it helped me, and it's a great tool, and I use it as a tool. Good, fine. I'm glad. I'm glad you're losing weight. We're going down a bad road. I will not walk away from that statement. We are going down a bad road. And people are, you're jealous because people. No, I'm not jealous. If there was a good, safe way for people to lose weight, if it was safe, I would be the first one saying, go after it. Just go after it. The side effects, as a matter of fact, I've been doing this, the thing on this podcast, we and my buddy Adam Carolla picked up on and did the same bit on his show the other day. It's not a bit when I do it. But if you look at the side effects of Mounjaro or Wegovy, one of the side effects is death. That's a side effect.
And if you don't like Elvis,
you can get any of the other problems, right? And they ain't a few problems, they're a lot. So go on with you taking the GLP-1s is not a magic pill at all.
So I saw this news and I started doing a little bit of research and I said, how long is it going to be? Turns out, Vinny, the ADA amended their standards of care guidelines last year, December, to specifically say GLP-1s should be used as a first-line therapy for individuals with type 2 diabetes or a high risk of ASCVD. So cardiovascular disease.
Okay.
And specifically, you need to use a brand name one because if it comes from a compound pharmacy, you're never going to know what's in it. They literally released a statement that said both of those things in the same statement.
Right, because they want you to take the one from Wegovy. Now, here's the thing. First line of defense from the American Diabetes Association. The first line of defense, American Diabetes Association, is to give up sugar. But that would mean that the millions that you get from Coke and Mars and Nestle and Unilever, Purina, all of that money goes away if you tell people to stop using sugar. PepsiCo, they all give millions to the American Diabetes Association. So they won't say the first line of defense is to cut out what's causing the problem. The first line of defense is going to always be keep doing what you like to do because they give us millions. Coke and PepsiCo, Taco Bell, they're giving us millions. Keep doing that. And then go take the drug from our other company who's also giving us millions. If that's not the inmates running the asylum, I don't know what is.
So who are the largest donors to the ADA? Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, Sanofi. Those are the three largest donors.
3 drug companies.
Right below that, Abbott, Bayer, Genentech, Lilly, Novo Nordisk again, and Sanofi again from a different year. Below that, Cintas, the Idaho Potato Commission, and Splenda. Right?
They're taking money,
Mind-boggling to me.
folks, you can't believe what these people are doing because they're compromised. They're compromised. You know who's not compromised? Me. That's why you need to go to VinnieTortorich.com. By the way, you want to get a consult? You want to talk to me? You're not talking to someone, you're talking to me. I pick up the phone. You want to set up a consult with me? Go to VinnieTortorich.com. Look for, hey, you can book a call today. That means you can talk to me as early as the next day. I do this all week, every week. Don't be shy. People will call me and they'll go, I wanted to call 2 years ago. Why didn't you? I'm scared you were going to yell at me. I was kind of shy. I was a little starstruck, whatever they say. Book the phone call. I can help you. That's all I do is help people every day. So go do that. Rate and review this podcast. If you get mad at someone about your vitamins or your nut butters not showing up on time, that's where you go to talk to Chris Shaffer. Go to X, go anywhere and talk to Chris. Call us and let us know if you don't get your stuff. We will make sure you get it. So go check all that out. On behalf of Chris Shaffer, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with just a little more of the man's too strong